A few months ago, I did a video on this channel talking about the news of Roger Goodell's pending contract extension. I think it was like $200 million over 5 years, and whether or not he deserved it. And my argument at the time was he absolutely did, based off of the skyrocketing values associated with NFL franchises, the increase in television dollars, the increased profits for the league's owners throughout big markets and small. When you looked at so many different things, it's like, you could make the argument that other people in that position could do that, yes, but you could say that about a lot of other successful operations and organizations, that other people could do that and do it just as well, if not better. But that doesn't mean that the guy in and of himself isn't necessarily doing what needs to be done and shouldn't be rewarded as such. So I thought at the time that it was going to be kind of a foregone conclusion that he would get his contract extension, because from an owner's standpoint, why would you take any risk? Why would you rock the boat? This is the guy that helped to orchestrate getting 2 teams to Los Angeles. You've got numerous other new stadiums built in different markets throughout the NFL. Like I said, when you talk about the television contracts, you talk about the expansion to Thursday Night Football. I mean, the NFL's imprint in this country and internationally, when you talk about the London games and such, the Mexico City game, is as great as it's ever been. Business was booming. Why would you rock the boat? Well, then the 2017 season happened. Quality of play hasn't been the best. When you look at it, it's maybe an example of too much of a good thing isn't a good thing at all. They've oversaturated the marketplace with the product, and that's not necessarily the best idea. Then you have all the politics that have gotten into the NFL this season, between the anthem protest and people on one side being pissed off about them and saying that that's disrespectful to the flag and the anthem. You have the president chiming in and talking about how he would fire Colin Kaepernick's ass for the anthem protest. You have all of that coming into play with the president, like you don't have better things to do. But then you have people on the other side that are pissed off at the league for Colin Kaepernick being blackballed, and the reaction to the player protest on the other side when people are talking about free. Just the fact is, it's kind of one of these ugly, nobody's really going to win or get the higher ground type of situations. And it's probably one of those situations that calls for some type of real leader that could come in and pull in all these sides and kind of find some type of middle ground and find a way, most importantly, to move the hell on. Well, Goodell's not really that guy. But that's not really what you had Goodell in place for. Goodell was there for other things, and he's been very successful in those other things. So now all of a sudden we're getting these reports about Jerry Jones is threatening to sue the compensation committee of owners if they approve Roger Goodell's contract extension. And of course, Jerry Jones, being the guy that he is, went and got Harvey Weinstein's lawyer. Woo! Really? Harvey Weinstein's lawyer, that's who you want to be associated with in this battle. Anyways, it's a simple question to me. Why all of a sudden does Jerry Jones hate Roger Goodell so much? Because it's Roger Goodell that helped get the Las Vegas move for the Oakland Raiders done, so that way the Raiders didn't come to San Antonio, which Jerry Jones most certainly did not want to happen. It is the same Roger Goodell that got 2 NFL teams ultimately in the Los Angeles market, the second biggest media market in the country. It's during Roger Goodell's time when that big shrine of a stadium at AT&T Stadium in Dallas was built. You know, and you could say, well, that's all on Jerry Jones. It's a lot on Jerry Jones, but don't say that Roger Goodell didn't have anything to do with that. There have been a lot of good things that have happened from a business standpoint during Roger Goodell's tenure. So why does Jerry Jones hate him so much all of a sudden? Is it because of the anthem protest and the way he handled it? Is it really? Because Roger Goodell is really in that bad spot where no matter what, he's not going to win. If he allows the protest, then the people that get upset about the protest are going to be upset and they're not going to watch. Then on the flip side, if he doesn't allow the protest and he tries to put an end to him, you got all these other people with all this other baggage that are already pissed off about Kaepernick not being signed. They're potentially not going to watch. Or if you kind of try to play it down the middle of the road and let things happen, but you try to half-ass it, which is kind of what happened, you have people on both sides of the spectrum, both sides of the argument, that aren't tuning in, that aren't coming to games. What was Goodell really supposed to do? And as far as Jerry Jones goes, I don't see why that would be enough of a reason for him to automatically hate Goodell. I'm not buying that one. I've seen a couple of articles where they've referenced the way the Los Angeles relocations were done. And you know what? Maybe there's something to knock for him there in terms of trying to move 2 teams into the marketplace instead of 1. In particular, the Chargers moving there might not have seen that sound on the surface. But we are still in the beginning stages, really, of that relocation. They don't even have their new stadium. There's a lot of time left to ultimately reserve final judgment. We can make judgments now and have opinions now. Sure, everybody has opinions. And they're just like assholes. They all stink. But he ultimately did get 2 teams into Los Angeles, which is something Tagliabue didn't do. He got 2 teams out of Los Angeles. One of the big goals of the owners was to get 2 teams into Los Angeles, and they ultimately accomplished that in part under Roger Goodell's leadership. So I don't think Jerry Jones can hate him for that either. Declining television ratings, well, that's still guaranteed money in terms of the television deals. And even if you talk about the ratings are down year over year, they're still really massive ratings. They are still by far the dominant sport in the United States. So no matter what, even if ratings slightly decline, there is still a huge market there for NFL games, period. No matter if some people are pissed off about anthem protests, no matter if people are pissed off about Kaepernick not being signed or people poo-pooing on the protests. The fact is the NFL has gotten to a point where it is so embedded into our culture that it is still a massive, massive part of the United States identity. You just can't go away from that. You just not. So it can't be that either. The simple thing is, Jerry Jones is pissed off at Roger Goodell because he suspended Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games. Period. Period. There is no other reason. All that other stuff is window dressing. It is garbage. It is hot garbage because we know the real reason Jerry Jones is pissed off is because he feels like he has a potential Super Bowl team, which I don't fully disagree with him. And he knows Ezekiel Elliott is his superstar, is that guy that could make that happen. And again, I don't disagree with them on that either. And he knows that Zeke Elliott being suspended for almost half the season probably kills that for his team and also has a negative impact on the league when one of his bigger stars is sitting on the sideline for 6 games. And again, I don't fundamentally disagree with Jerry Jones. But it is one of these things. Now all of a sudden because it affects you, now all of a sudden because it's one of your guys, now all of a sudden because it negatively impacts one of your teams, now all of a sudden it's a big freaking deal. Now all of a sudden we got to examine Roger Goodell. Now all of a sudden we're worried about does he have too much power? Is there not enough checks and balances in terms of suspensions and punishment that's handed out from the NFL office? So where was the outrage by Jerry Jones with all these other suspensions of guys that weren't even convicted of things and they still got multiple games? Where was the outrage for Jerry Jones in other situations, such as like Adrian Peterson and Greg Hardy and other situations, so forth? Brandon Marshall over the years, the number of times he had been fucking popped off for domestic violence and how small his suspension was. Josh Brown, the kicker for the Giants, and the limited ramifications that he got from that. All of that other stuff seemed to be no big issue for Jerry Jones. But all of a sudden now, because his guy got suspended for 6 games, you could argue unjustly for something that he not only has not been convicted for, let alone on trial for, he was never even charged for, and the authorities decided not to charge him due to insufficient evidence. Now Jerry Jones is pissed off. And don't get me wrong, I would be pissed off too. I would absolutely be pissed off. And I think it's kind of a G move that Jerry Jones is trying to sit there and say now, oh, no. I'm not going to let you get $40 million a year guaranteed when you're fucking with one of my dudes. I'm going to show you who really runs shit. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the owner serves at the leisure of the owners because he does report to the owners. He works for the owners first and foremost. Period. But I just think it's kind of bullshit that after all of these things that Jerry Jones really didn't care about because it didn't bother his team, now all of a sudden that one of his guys gets suspended, now all of a sudden what Roger Goodell has in terms of punitive power is a major and significant issue. I mean, we have to call it as we see it. Jerry Jones only gives a shit because Ezekiel Elliott has a 6-game suspension hanging over his head. And I don't know if he thinks playing these games is going to send a message to Goodell, or it's going to get Goodell and the NFL to back off of the suspension, or he thinks that we tie things up the Al Davis style in court long enough between this and Ezekiel Elliott's whole appeal process and situation that he's not going to get suspended the rest of 2017. Who the hell knows? Who knows? But we all know why Jerry Jones hates Roger Goodell. And I think it's kind of bullshit. Because even though, yes, I do feel Ezekiel Elliott was unfairly punished compared to what was actually there and things that he really should have been punished for, I think we get into a very dangerous place when we start talking about suspending people for multiple games. for stuff they haven't even been charged with, let alone tried for, convicted for. Now we've gotten to a point where Roger Goodell is basically judge, jury, and executioner. It's almost like a dictatorship in terms of NFL punishment. That's something to be concerned about. But why the hell wasn't Jerry Jones and the other owners concerned about this before? Why the hell did they give him this type of power? Why did they allow this to happen? If Jerry Jones hates anybody at this point in time, it should be Jerry Jones because, number one, you helped put Goodell in power. Number two, you've continued to prop him up in his power. And number three, you had no problem apparently before with other players getting suspended like this. Why all of a sudden now is it such a big deal? If it's a big deal for you with your guy, it should be a big deal across the board. But of course, Jerry Jones is a fucking hypocrite, and it's not. It's only a big deal when it affects one of his guys. And that's that simple. Jerry Jones hates Roger Goodell because Roger Goodell suspended one of his guys. And now he's being petty and he wants revenge. Was anybody else on any other team, Jerry Jones wouldn't give a shit, period.